history scholars. My name is Quinn Loofbro, and this is going to be the last assignment that I have for my history class. I'm super excited to get into it, a little saddened to see the class go after all these months. I've had a fantastic time, much better than any other history class I've ever had in my life, and I'm hopeful that you'll enjoy it as much as I have. So, for this time, I'm going to be discussing 5 different topics that I have enjoyed and learned the most of throughout the class and the semester. So, let's get right into it. Alright, so the first topic I want to talk about is Reconstruction. If you asked me what Reconstruction was a year ago, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. To be honest, when I was first hearing about it, learning about it through the articles, the documentaries especially, which were fantastic to watch, love those. It gave so much information that I only learned a small amount of in school, but really developed a overarching a timeline of events that have happened throughout this class. So to look at that and see where the progression began, went through, ended, how things have turned out the way they are today. After the Civil War, about 14 years, things were relatively good. If you were in the southern states, not so much quite yet, but right afterwards, you had a lot more African American people going into Congress, especially the largest percentage of African Americans in the Senate seats as well as the House of Representatives that we've seen almost ever. Um, if it wasn't for just bureaucracy, things like that, people's ego. I mean, you got people like Andrew Johnson who made all those Southern oligarchs and super rich people down there basically not have any jail time for what they have essentially done to the United States, which was treason, basically. So, and they didn't have to pay back anything, and they didn't have to follow any rules that were laid out for what should have been a redistribution of land and assets that should have been the cornerstone of the Reconstruction period that would allow for a much longer effect to take place and to really have that kick-starting effect to what essentially is now a problem that we've been facing for almost 200 years at this point. And to see that just wither away, I could not have imagined how angry I would have been at that time when it happened, and the takeover after that of the Reconstruction was unlike anything we've ever seen in this country before, other than maybe when we first separated from Britain. But yeah, the second one I want to go over was one of the influential people of the Reconstructionist movement. There are many to be talked about, like I said before. But one person I really found inspiring, very interesting, was a woman named Ida B. Wells. She, like I said, was an investigative journalist, and she spent a large portion of her life writing and getting journalism on the events happening within the South that were not reported correctly throughout many decades. The lynchings that were happening, the race riots, they were absolutely horrific, and they were being either spun by news articles, magazine agencies, other people who had their own private interests with it. But it was hard enough for women in general to own and to go into having a newspaper, journalism, much less black women at that point. You rarely see that with black men as well, and it's really inspiring to see that happen. And she had her entire news agency burnt to the ground, and she said, "I raised you one," moved to Chicago, and still continued to do that. She also fought against suffrage. She fought for suffrage movements as well. I can make a 30-minute long video on her just with that. But yeah, it was extreme. It was very interesting to see people like her and others during this period of time do what just needed to be done, stepped up to the plate, and got exactly what needed to happen going. The third topic I like to talk about is the South and how it was created and how we know it as today. Learning about all that stuff in the articles that I've been reading and the academic journal article reviews, which have been fantastic, and even further in depth with the documentaries and how they have shown that this sense of a lost cause affecting the Southerners, especially after the Civil War, really breeded a hatred, not for the North, but for everyone associated with them and thought to be associated with those ideologies. And also the forms of tyranny placed on people of color, and well, it was essentially still slavery back then, which was apprenticeship. Very interesting to learn, never knew about that stuff, and how it was so poorly handled by the United States government with the military involvement and martial law that took place but never really served its full intended purpose. And the retraction of that military force before things were really settled and reconstructed was a huge shot to the foot to the early beginnings of the civil rights movement. And because of this, you see a lot of African Americans who live, especially in southern states, begin to have this large migration outward up to the northern states, New York, Ohio, Michigan area, over to like Nebraska, and mainly over to California. And you have what I've learned in the articles once again is the creation of these of lower income neighborhoods of poverty, projects as they would be called, essentially with higher African American populations compared to the relatively mixed or largely white in proportion neighborhoods surrounding that. And you see in Oakland how when everyone came over, they had all these jobs that was provided by the railroads, the shipping yards, especially in the World War II when they were hiring a whole bunch of welders. Everyone came to those shipping areas and had to live relatively close to where they were working. Once you go past World War II, you have union jobs that have mistreated essentially anyone who wasn't white. And when you have all these jobs being lost, especially in the shipping sector and the decrease in popularity of railroads, you get certain isolated areas that, due to real estate not having any availability for outward movement and no jobs at that point, you get very isolated portions of cities and counties that have no jobs, much fewer compared to the surrounding populace, and a inability to move outward. And people wonder why these areas are created and why they have so much crime, so many drugs, so many gangs that have been created from them, and it's no surprise of why that's happened because they've been historically undermined by unions, by companies, by the government itself, by real estate agents, by social institutions that have pitted against African Americans at every step of the way to keep them down, to keep them in a lower economic social status than everyone else. And those effects that have plagued these communities since the 40s, since even before that, are still a very prevalent problem that we have today. And this is where you get the modern civil rights movement in the 1960s coming out of that. You have the part, like people like the Black Panther Party. This is another topic of mine. I did not know that they were so close to home. I thought they were more like southern ish, they came from that area. No, Oakland, of all places. And they had a major prevalence in Sacramento here, which I had absolutely no idea that's where they were from. So to see how they were actually presented compared to the mainstream was very enlightening in that way. And to show how they had a community um, outreach, how they present themselves to keep their community safe and to progress the idea that being who you are shouldn't be bad. You shouldn't have to change who you are and who your community is like to fit into the preconceived notions of what is normal. And you could take pride in that, and that's extremely good to see. Seeing this camaraderie happen within these towns to come together and really build something by them and for them to create something better for the generations to come is really fantastic. And it's an absolute shame the extent that the government has gone to silence these ideas, like when the FBI straight up assassinated a leading member of the Black Panther Party just so that a black messiah wouldn't be created. And to have something like that be connected all the way up to the presidency is baffling. It really is. And it's a shame because we over time we could have come so far in how our race relations are today, but through all those missteps throughout the past, um, throughout the past part of 2 centuries, we have been continuously and failing and lacking in motivation to address these issues. And that is the main thing that I have learned from this class. It's been an extreme enlightenment to me. It has been a very motivating time that I've had. To be honest, I didn't think I'd have fun in a history class, but I actually ended up really enjoying this. And to learn so much when you thought that you already knew the whole story is fascinating. It's really amazing. So I'd like to thank you, Professor Collins, personally for being such a great teacher. I always love watching your weekly videos. They have been a super big help. I really enjoyed them. Keep it up. And to anyone else watching, I thank you for watching the whole video. This has been my final exam. Super excited to go winter break here. Stay home during this whole corona business. But yeah, I am super excited for the future. And thank you once again, sincerely. Peace out.